And what about this phrase? How often do you hear this phrase? Millions and millions of people proclaim their love of fish every day of the year, and yet we eat them. In fact, for 98% of all individuals in the world, this phrase, I love fish, actually means I love to eat fish, doesn't it? Yeah, of course it does, because if you loved fish, as in loving your cat or your dog, you certainly wouldn't kill and eat them, would you? No, I don't think so. Again, it's how we use our words, isn't it? There are three principal ways our oceans are being destroyed, and all three are caused or at least heavily affected by food choice. Raising and eating animals on land causes warming and acidification of our oceans, which is now irreversible in our lifetime. It's one of the boundaries that we've passed. Surface runoff from livestock operations on land has caused more than 550 nitrogen-flooded dead zones around the world, comprising 95,000 square miles of areas completely devoid of oxygen or life. So any meaningful discussion of the state of our oceans has to first begin with frank discussions about land-based animal agriculture. But it is fishing that has the largest impact of all. Incredibly large amounts of sea life are taken from our oceans in three ways. First, they're taken as target fish. That's the one you want to eat. Fish are also taken out of our oceans to feed other fish grown on factory fish farms, part of the aquaculture movement. And lastly, fish are taken as bykill due to the first two types of fishing. Many call it bycatch. It's actually bykill. Well, that really doesn't leave too much in our oceans now, does it? In fact, our oceans are being ravaged, and yet everyone we know still eats fish. Fragile, interdependent, and poorly understood ecosystems have been devastated. Over 90 million tons of fish were caught last year, and quite a few more millions and millions of tons of bykill, which are all those other innocent sea life caught, killed, and discarded in the process of trying to catch that targeted fish everyone's asking for. Bykill includes juvenile fish, they'll never make their way to maturity, all 7 of the endangered sea turtles, sea lions, birds, dolphins. It's so sad. Even whales are bykill. Of the 17 major fishing stock areas in the world, all of them are either overexploited or on the verge of collapse. 87% of the world's fish species are affected, considered heavily depleted from overfishing practices. Well, that's quite a bit of damage. But along comes this word sustainable to justify continued extractions or harvesting. How is this word even used in the fishing industry? Who defines it? Who monitors it? And with less than 1% of all of our oceans being regulated, less than 1% of all of our oceans are being regulated, then who decides on enforcement? If you look at this carefully, or even not so carefully, the real answer is no one. And I say real answer because now there's sea life caught and labeled sustainable, as we all know, when in fact it's not. But it's still labeled as such by a number of highly respected organizations, such as the Marine Stewardship Council, or MSC. The Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch, highly respected organization, still has lobster from the Gulf of Maine listed as a good alternative. It's not a good alternative for many reasons. Rapidly declining number of lobster, inefficient trapping mechanisms, and most importantly, is the sad effect lobster trapping has on the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. There are only 400 of these magnificent creatures left that we haven't killed. And nearly all of them, 82% of them, are getting entangled, injured, and killed in those trap lines. But it's not just lobster trap lines from Maine that cause all the problems behind the scenes. It's fishing nets from all over the world. Whales caught in fishing nets die a very slow, painful, agonizing death while trying to desperately free themselves over a period of 6 months' time on average from the time they first became entangled. 6 months. We owe these whales and lobsters much more than this or this. Elsewhere in the world, there have been an estimated 705,000 tons, or roughly 500 miles, of non-biodegradable fishing nets cut loose from fishing vessels each year for the past 25 years, catching countless numbers of unsuspecting sea life. When researchers and ocean conservation groups discuss the topic of overfishing, they typically point to the tons of wild fish caught per year and those raised from aquaculture, and they call this production. Well, I look at this much differently and certainly more accurately by adding to these figures another 28 million tons of IUU, which is illegally caught, unregulated, and unreported, which I don't even know how they can come up with a number for that. And also you have to add to this figure bykill, which amounts to perhaps another 200 million tons of sea animals per year. So it's not accurate for researchers to call any of this production, because in reality what we're doing is destroying. Fishing, of course, destroys species of target fish, as we just said. But it also destroys ecosystems and biodiversity. All forms of fishing are destructive by definition because it kills something. Fishing also destroys habitat with trawling, middle and deep and high trawling that excavates and ruins ocean floors, purse seine methods that drop a mile-long net, circles around it, draws it tight, and catches every form of sea life in the middle. This is mostly how tuna is caught. Then there's longline fishing, where a boat drops a main fishing line that can be up to 60 miles long with thousands and thousands of hooks and barbs and catching whatever sea life happens to get in its way. The only fishing methods fully banned are using explosives and poisons. But that's somewhat of a joke because those methods are on the rise because they're unenforceable. Again, only 1% of the oceans are even regulated. You know, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch is aptly named because that's exactly what they're doing. They're watching all this happen while promoting it to be continued. And irrespective of climate change, climate change doesn't matter here. It's predicted that we will lose nearly all commercially recognized sea life in our oceans by collapse of their systems by the year 2048. So how effective is that sustainable seafood label? There are many, many examples of oceanic species that have collapsed while under the watch of our two certified sustainable organizations since they were formed in the mid to late 1990s. Everything on this list is considered and labeled sustainable, but none of them really are. Cod were fished only 1% of their original numbers off the coast of Newfoundland, more recently to a near extinct status in the North Sea, while stated that they were sustainable. They'll never recover in our lifetime. I've run out of room on this one slide to show you all the species in trouble, so here's a number for you. Over 1,000 types of fish are affected. And so it is with fishing under that sustainable label. Target fish are becoming extinct. We move on to the next fish in line, creating serial depletion, and then other sea life up and down the food web are becoming extinct. A cascade effect, all part of the collateral damage that begins with us. Coral reef systems around the world are in serious trouble. Most of us know that. The Great Barrier Reef has lost more than half of its coral cover since 1985. Most would think it's due to pollution and climate change. That's what we'd like to blame it on. But the primary cause of coral reef death there, throughout the Caribbean and throughout most of the world, is not pollution. And it's not from climate change. It's from overfishing. An example in the other direction can be found in the Queens Islands off the southern coast of Cuba, where they haven't allowed any commercial fishing, and the coral reef ecosystems there look the same as they have for the past several thousands of years. One of the most important factors in balancing coral reef ecosystems are predatory fish like sharks, but we're killing them too, quite a few of them. 1/3 of all shark species are nearing extinction. We're killing around 100 million sharks per year. Why? Well, 40 to 70 million sharks have their fins cut off like this, and then they're thrown overboard to die so we can eat shark fin soup. And it's terrible to see this, isn't it? And I know what you're thinking. You're saying to yourselves, I don't eat shark fin soup. No, not me. And furthermore, it's banned in 11 states in our country. And isn't that great? But again, over 98% of us do eat fish. And by eating fish, any type of fish, we're doing this to 60 million sharks that are caught each year and killed in fishing nets and fishing lines as bykill. 60 million. So go ahead and ban shark fin soup all you want, but why would you stop there? If you're truly concerned about endangered sea turtles, whales, dolphins, sharks, and the state of our oceans, if you're truly concerned, you should ban fishing. Well, many fisheries that are accepted and labeled as sustainable are actually viewed by scientists as unsustainable. And I could show you hundreds of examples of statements by scientists that realize that it's unsustainable. Killing krill now has become a very big business. But you don't need to eat krill or any other sea life or animal to get your omega-3s. unless, of course, you listen to Dr. Oz. He'll tell you something different. Krill is, though, fundamental to the survival of almost every animal species in and around the Antarctic. Once the most abundant animal species on Earth, krill numbers have dropped by 78% since 1980, in turn affecting the decline of a number of penguin species and making it difficult for baleen whales such as blue, right, and fin, who are trying desperately to make a comeback. The quota, or maximum sustainable yield, for extracting krill out of our oceans and killing them has been placed at 1.5 million tons per year. And yet scientists admit to knowing very little about krill or their interconnected ecosystems heavily affected by krill, such as phytoplankton and algae in one direction that krill feed off of, or all the other species that feed on krill in the other direction. 2 new reports were released recently indicating that the amount of sea life extracted from our oceans over the years were vastly underestimated by the United Nations, and that reef fishing by local indigenous people that we thought were just fine are actually doing more damage than they once thought, with various species being exploited at much higher rates than previously predicted, all simply adding to the gloomy picture of our lack of stewardship in our oceans. In the Pacific Northwest, similar to other seacoast areas of the world, there's a blind spot when it comes to fishing. It's a very uneasy topic to confront. Our government declared the Snake River sockeye salmon here, a beautiful, beautiful fish, endangered. They declared it endangered in 1991, but within just 8 years, their numbers plummeted. And 16 other salmon species were in trouble shortly thereafter. Earlier this year, the Puget Sound was closed to commercial fishing, which is the right thing to do, long term. The numbers of most species of salmon, cod, tuna, swordfish, halibut, and many other large species have declined by over 90% of their original numbers. Bluefin tuna and swordfish species are less than 4% of their historic numbers, still not protected by the Endangered Species Act because, well, we would rather eat them into extinction. Instead of eating dolphin-free tuna, we should be concerned about eating simply tuna-free. This is a Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch's approved sustainable method of catching tuna. A good recent example of our certified sustainable systems not working is with sardines. These fish are in serious trouble, and you might ask, who cares about sardines? Well, the answer is we should all care about sardines, and we should all care about all species of animals that we share this planet with. Their population has dropped by 93% just in the last 8 years. 93% are gone. Once the most abundant fish in the California current, spanning from Alaska to Mexico, many scientists predict that sardines are not going to recover in the next 30 or 40 years, if at all. Losses have been blamed on the warm blob, an area in the ocean that's a little warmer than others. But all scientists agree that overfishing is the principal problem. And even if there's some correlation to their losses and to global warming and the plummeting numbers of sardines or any species, then that's just one more reason to stop fishing them, isn't it? And to allow them to recover. And even though there's a current ban on sardine fishing, sardines can still be caught as bykill. That's how ridiculous our system is. And bykill can be up to 50% of the total catch of any particular fishing boat. Down the Pacific coast a little ways, we have the other half to the story about sardines. Last year, more than 3,000 starving sea lion pups were found stranded. Studies revealed that this was because the mother sea lions were undernourished, because their favorite food is sardines. This, of course, is only the tip of the ecological iceberg, as numerous other species that rely on sardines are likely in trouble. Whales, dolphins, tuna, pelicans, nearly all predator fish. We just can't see them struggling as easily as we can see these pups. So how are we managing these issues? Well, scientists knew about the collapse of these fish in 2012, and they knew about the devastating effect on other species such as sea lions that are still not addressed today, with fishing executives blaming the crash of sardines on climate change, and they blamed it on El Nino. This is very similar to what's occurring with dwindling populations of anchovy off the coast of Peru, the loss of menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay. 98% of all pelagic fish that are caught, 98% are fed to livestock, farmed fish in aquaculture settings, and they're fed to pigs in China. The most heavily killed fish species in the world is the Alaskan pollock, harvested at a rate of 3 million tons per year, and yet it's still labeled as sustainable. Who would think you could take 3 million tons of any species from anywhere on Earth and think they wouldn't be missed somehow? Only us. Here's the point regarding our oceans. We could talk for hours about this, but it's no longer a problem of overfishing. No, that was a term that could be applied accurately back in the early to mid 1800s. Today, it's about fishing.